Hey everybody, welcome to this week's edition of the Dragonproof e-commerce podcast. I am Rick Wilson, CEO of Miva and host of this podcast, as well as author of Dragonproof e-commerce. The dramatic shift to work from home opens up huge possibilities, and workers suddenly have more freedom than ever. I was just reading yesterday that 1 in 5 people in America know someone or are planning on or already have done a transition to a new location, often for family reasons, sometimes for tax reasons or lifestyle reasons, because they now have the freedom to move. Worker mobility had been getting worse and worse over the years, and suddenly it's dramatically shifted. And so I've got something really fun in the works, and my producer, Chris, who you guys have heard from before, wanted to grill me about it on the air. So welcome, Chris.
Hello. Hi, Rick.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well today.
I think the last time I was on the show was April, so not a lot's happened since then.
No,
Nice.
It's not like every day the world's turned upside down.
Nice quiet summer.
Yeah.
So, I've actually worked remote for years and years, and so for me, there hasn't been much of a change work-wise this year, and there isn't really that sense of like new freedom that I hear all of you guys talking about. I can go anywhere, it's.
If I can pull the curtain back for our audience, Chris doesn't leave like a 5-block radius of his house.
All right, but this isn't about me.
Okay.
It's definitely a different situation for you and at Miva, and I know even some of the staff has already acted on it and have moved away from San Diego. Is that right?
Yeah, we've had a number. I'm trying to think of how many have actually moved already. 4 or 5 people have already moved already, and we're anticipating a total of about 10. In call it the first year.
Yeah.
That'll be about 8% of our workforce or 7% of our workforce moving to new locations.
That's
now we have a process for it because you have to request it. You can work from anywhere, quote unquote, but to actually fully relocate, you have to request it because then it creates nexus in the state for Miva, and then it costs money for us. And so there's a whole steps. But once someone goes to a state, if another employee wants to go to a state and their boss is okay with it, go for it.
That's really, kind of amazing, right?
Yeah. I think our employees are still trying to get their head around it. And some of them, we're still getting our head around it because, there's certainly people out there with kids and stuff who are like, I'm hoping for a place where I can start going back to an office soon, at least sometimes. And then there's some people who are like, screw this, I'm out of here. I'm going on the road.
Yeah. And so that brings us to you.
Yep.
You're going on the road.
Well, yeah, but I'm not actually going on the road permanently. So what I've cooked up is, I've taken quarantine, and I definitely took the shelter-in-place order in California very seriously, and I've taken quarantine very seriously. And so, I haven't been out and about that much. And when I have, I've been very safe about where I go, just careful across the board. And as much as I like being in my house and enjoying the beautiful weather of Southern California, it was time to freshen my mind up. And so taking an RV and my dogs and going on a 2 to 3 week road trip. And I'm not going on a vacation. I'm going to be working every day from the road. I set my own schedule essentially, right? So I'll get up in the morning like I do here, and I'll answer emails, and I'll probably move a couple meetings around that are standing so that if I have to be in the RV to do meetings, I can just crank them all out. And then probably at night, after dinner, kind of catch up on emails and chat messages. We're going to report podcasts from the road. So I'm going to try to figure out how feasible it is to work while traveling around in the RV.
So it's kind of like a proof of concept, really. I mean, people are saying, I could work from anywhere. I could work from a beach in Fiji. And so you're going to try this out is basically what we're talking about.
Correct. And, the thing is, the one benefit of what I'm doing, well, 2 benefits. One is if it's a total and utter disaster, I can turn around and come right home.
Right.
And then the second one, talking about working from a beach in Fiji, you could, but then you have time zone problems. And I'm for the most part sticking in this time zone. I might get one time zone over, but that's no big deal.
All right. So I'm actually fascinated by this because, like I said, I've don't really exercise this kind of freedom, but now that it's seeming more and more possible, I think it's actually pretty inspiring to people who are in the remote work game, that they can really change their lives right now. So let's drill down a little bit deeper, like into what you're going to do. So first of all, I need more information about your ride. Like, what is this thing? Is this the same beast that you have brought to Burning Man in the past?
It's the exact same one.
What is it?
So it is I always forget if it's 24 or 26, but call it a 25-foot Winnebago RV that's based on the Mercedes chassis, right? So easy to drive, drives like a Sprinter van. It's bigger, so you have to be aware of your space. Don't go through drive-throughs; you will definitely hit the roof. But it's easy to navigate. I don't know that I would be willing to try this adventure in like some behemoth 35 or 40-foot RV. Those take a lot of work to drive. And so that's what we're taking. And it is just, it's got a bathroom. It's got a queen size bed. The dining room table turns into another queen size bed that I can stick dog beds on, or I can stick them on the captain's chairs that you turn around. So you essentially end up with seating. If you count squeezing into the little dining area, you end up with seating inside for 6 total. But granted, obviously, I'm not going around trying to have close encounters, quarantine conversations. So there won't be anything like that going on.
Well, it seems more like it's roomy enough that you basically never have to step foot outside of the vehicle, like, ever, right?
You definitely don't have to, but I think that would make me. I think part of my reason for wanting to do this is I want to go put my work into blocks, and then in between those blocks, get out, go for walks, go see things. First stop is going to be Lake Tahoe. So, that may be the second stop, but going to head up kind of like, we'll probably head up to 5 and then cut over to Lake Tahoe, and do a little work in the morning, and then go down to the lake and chill out and relax. Hi, Lola.
Yeah, get used to it because she's going to be in there with you, right?
I know. I was hoping that I would be able to stop talking just in time if she started barking like this.
That's all right. We'll fix it in post.
Yeah,
so
that's fine.
Let's talk a little bit more about like the kind of workspace aspect of this setup. Like, what tools do you need? What kind of computer do you have? Like, is it really bare bones? Is there going to be a dedicated area within this thing? Or are you just going to sit in the driver's seat with your computer and do it really casual?
So I'm bringing 2 laptops. I'm bringing a MacBook Air, which is what I'll be primarily using, right? But it's got a small screen. And then I have a MacBook Pro 16, like with the biggest monitor they make, that I normally use as a desktop at home. It used to be my desktop at the office, and that I connect to external monitors, all that stuff, blah blah blah. I'm not bringing my monitors. I'm just bringing the 2 laptops. And the idea is some of the stuff I have to do, especially when it comes to spreadsheets and whatnot. The MacBook Air screen is just too small to be super effective, and you need that real estate. But my expectation is that I'll probably only use the MacBook Pro 16 1 or 2 times. The other main thing you have to have, is not a piece of anything. I need to make sure, at least on work days, that wherever I set up camp, I'll check the internet speed on my phone and make sure that when I hotspot to my phone or my iPad, that I can get good speed. Because if suddenly I'm somewhere and I can't, connect, and all I'm doing is constantly like waiting, and then I get a barrage of emails and I can't reply, then that's not functional. So I need access to internet, which should be pretty ubiquitous. And I'm bringing 2 little laptops, or 1 little laptop, one large laptop.
So I guess it's obvious, but the internet really is the limiting factor, like more so than anything else. Like, you simply have to have internet. That becomes like the only parameter, really, right, for where you can go and can't go.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, thinking about me doing podcasts from the road, upload speeds via Zoom consumes a lot more upload because of things like video and all the other features. We may end up doing these via FaceTime audio while I'm on the road just to maintain my audio quality, and have to figure out how to record those. I don't know. That's kind of behind the scenes talk on the podcast, but that you are absolutely correct. Internet is the critical factor.
And software wise, it's just identical to what your current setup is at home, right? Mainly just...
Yeah, because they're the same laptops I use already.
So, I mean, what are you even using? It's email, it's chat. What else do you need during a day?
Yeah, so I use email, essentially Slack, Zoom, Microsoft Excel, a little bit of Word, but not very often. PowerPoint, but only when we're coming up to a conference or something, and that's not happening right now. Now, our team uses a lot more tools for stuff like project management and all this stuff, and I have access to those tools, but I generally don't log into them.
Well, you're not coding on the road, right? You're really just communicating.
Yes, I'm communicating on the road. But we've had our CTO, John Birchmore. He's been on the road with his laptop and coding on the road. He did Big Bear for. I mean, they weren't fully on the road, but him and his wife and their 2 kids went up to Big Bear and worked totally remotely from Big Bear with just a laptop because he has all the same tools. You log into the VPN and he was at least on Wi-Fi versus cell phone, but same story.
So what about time? Because I find just doing basic remote work at home and certainly this year, managing your time becomes a huge part of like how well you are, how able you are to do work in a given day. Whether it's like distractions or just motivating to start when no one's around to, intimidate you into starting visually. So how are you going to find uninterrupted blocks of time to work that aren't just like quickly returning a text and then you have to deal with 18 other things that are going on your trip? Like, are you going to set up dedicated times during each day or not really?
So that is my plan. But as this is a proof of concept, my plan may very well change. But that is my plan. My plan is, sort of breakfast email hour or 2, right? Then probably, let's say the first 2 to 2.5 hours of the morning are emails and Slacks with coworkers, making sure that I am aware of what my meeting commitments are for the day. And hopefully I'll have a block of 2 hours after that until I have any meetings, right? And then I'll go take those 2 hours and explore wherever I'm at. And then I'll go through those meetings, and then theoretically, if I'm planning this well, we'll be getting close to late afternoon when it's really nice out, and I'll go explore again through sunset, come back, have dinner, catch up on the emails, because it doesn't take long for me to end up with hundreds and hundreds of emails in my inbox. So a lot of what I seem to do other than communicate is, just stay on top of emails because they can get you.
I mean, is this how you currently imagine your own Miva workforce is operating currently?
I think it varies by role and department, right? So if you're in the creative departments, if you're a writer, if you are a graphic designer, and if you're doing things that don't require you to be on Slack all day communicating with other members of your team, I think I wouldn't be shocked. I think you're being totally judged in that case by output, right? So if you essentially have a individualist role within a communal organization, I think controlling your schedule, as long as you are mindful of things like texts and Slacks and emails, because if you get something that says urgent, you should take care of it. And like, for example, everyone in Miva knows I'm about to do this. And so I'll make it clear to my staff who report directly to me that if you need me during the day, don't rely on Slack, text me. And so that way I will, unless I lose it or break it, I will always have my phone with me and I can stop what I'm doing. And what I just described to you isn't that different than my current working schedule. I just do it a little differently here. I do the morning email Slack thing. Then I take a break for coffee and breakfast. But then I try to jam all my meetings into the morning so I can have kind of a lighter afternoon. And then at night I get back to emails and Slacks.
I guess like what I'm looking for, as a worker? Are we kind of redefining how we're measuring productivity? Like, is that what this is really all about?
Well, and again, going back to roles. So let me give you an example of some of our employees who work at Miva who really they could do the traveling part of what I'm describing as long as they had someone else to drive during their shift hours. But if you're in our technical assistance center, they have very specific hours. They're literally taking phone calls. It's all via their computer, but they're taking phone calls. And so for them, this would be much harder to do because it's a collaborative effort. They need to be on Slack, waiting. There's a manager watching, and if there's a ticket that comes in that they need to handle, they're assigning tickets. If there's a site that's down, they have to immediately stop what they're doing and handle a site that's down. So they have a much more rigid role. Their role has not. Their actual role hasn't changed at all since we went to work remote. They're just doing it at their house.
Right.
And then, like, if you're a programmer, like in John Birchmore's group, they're a deadline-based group, right? So a lot of that work can be done kind of at any hour you want. They could certainly pull off what I'm trying to do in my situation, but they have to be mindful of deadlines. There's a certain number of bugs that need to be closed, certain number of lines of code that need to be written and reviewed and all that stuff. And then if you're in our professional services team, the people who build and fix websites, or our customer success team, those really you're pretty much on set hours there. So I would say accounting is on set hours for the most part. HR is too for the most part. So I would say probably 50 to 60% of the company have a schedule almost identical to what they had when we were in office, because they're using collaborative tools where they have to interact with other people to do their job. And I'd say 40% of our company have deadline-based schedules, right, as opposed to collaborative schedules, where they can, as long as they get everything done by the deadline, then it's fine.
I'm just wondering, as more certainly of the e-commerce world or just the working world in general starts to adopt some of these ways of working, that the typical 9 to 5 Monday through Friday office hours schedule is going to be mutating all over the place, and that would have ripple effects down to your company, having to kind of be online and available during conventional business hours. That idea is getting a little harder to grab onto if everyone's working from their hypothetical RV, right? So how's that going to play out? That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. But there are certain jobs that you have to be on call for. So in that sense, you've got to plan around your job and your duties.
The reason we're all in this situation, obviously, is COVID. And I'm just wondering, while you're going away on this trip, how you're going to stay safe and what your game plans are for just basic like COVID protocol, because a lot of us are in the mindset right now that we can't even leave the house, let alone go on a cool trip somewhere and do some of these things that you're talking about. So how are you going to approach that so that you feel good about it?
Sure. So ironically, I had a doctor's appointment this morning. One of the things I'm doing is I'm getting all my annual checkups done before I leave. And then, because last thing I wanted was to be, in Lake Tahoe and have something horribly go wrong, and I'm nowhere near any of my medical providers. Obviously, if an emergency happens, I'll go to whatever's local. But it's best to have access to the people who already know you. So it's almost like getting your car tuned up before you go on a road trip. So I'm starting with all that stuff for myself. And then, as far as COVID goes, my plan is to really go to mostly out of the way places and not be in crowds. To the extent that I'm going to see other people, it's going to be outside. And so, if I go, say, and the actual where I'm going is not set in stone, but let's say I go from Lake Tahoe to Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and then kind of meander back through the desert to San Diego. All the places I would be going are not going to be metropolitan areas, unless I'm forced, because I'm coming back via the 15 to get through Vegas as fast as possible without stopping. That's that's the first step. I'm also going to be following all the same COVID rules I follow here, right? If I'm out in public, I'll social distance, I'll wear masks. Now, if I'm out in nature by myself and just my dogs, we won't be wearing masks. But really, I'm going to try to do exactly what I've been doing here in San Diego, and with a focus on going to not densely populated places. Also, RVs are hard to use in densely populated places.
Right.
I wouldn't want to drive it up a street near where you live.
Yeah, well, I commend you for your courage and level-headedness, like on this enterprise, because I'm still finding it hard to organize a trip to the supermarket.
Oh, yeah. Well, especially when you have things like Instacart, it makes it even harder.
Yeah.
You can keep insulating yourself.
Yeah. So how do you hope this is all going to work out? I mean, do you think this is kind of the beginning of a new chapter for how you're going to work? Is this a one-off until we get through this thing? Like, where's this going to go?
Well, first, let's talk about what my goal for the trip is. My goal for the trip is, one of the things I've learned during a pandemic is that almost everything that I like to do as a hobby was not home-based. I travel a lot, scuba dove, music festivals, that kind of stuff. And pretty much all of that's been shut, for 6-7 months or whatever, 6 months. And so you don't realize how much of a mental health toll that takes on you when all of the things you do to release stress are suddenly gone. And I didn't realize it at first too, because, at the beginning, there was sort of this sense that, it'll take 3 months, we'll get this handled and then back to normal. And you're kind of like, well, I can do anything for 3 months. Well, now for a variety of reasons, especially in the US, this is going to be an ongoing thing. And as we've learned, it also appears to work functionally like the common cold in that it'll be a seasonal thing, right? So now we don't know that for sure yet. And I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. But so my goal for this trip is a mental health reset, right? While still working. And if the trip works out well, I could see doing it twice a year, and I'm not planning on super long ones. I have yet to even contemplate the idea of doing a cross country road trip for months. I think what I'll find from this trip is that, anything from 1 to 2, maybe 2.5 weeks out in nature and with my pups is enough to kind of get me out of the homebound mindset. I may learn something totally different. I may be back in 10 days and we're doing another podcast. I'm like, hey guys, I failed. I don't really know. Well,
I hope you'll be honest with us.
I will be honest with you.
I mean, zooming out a little bit, if we took the adventure travel component out of this and just talked about this new flexibility, not just to work remotely, but to work anywhere remotely, is this something you would be in favor of, A, for your company, and B, just sort of for all companies, a far more decentralized spread of where the workforce actually is? Does that sound good or not, and why not?
So when I was younger, I would have adamantly swore up and down that sounds fantastic, right? That was sort of the dream of the internet to do that. And as someone who's not young anymore, the idea, I'm mixed on it, and mostly just because we don't have the data yet. If it works, I think it'll be fantastic. And I think the genie's out of the bottle, so I think we're going to find out one way or the other. There are a lot of companies that can now do this. And from a CEO's perspective, I don't have to just recruit from the San Diego market anymore. I can recruit from the entire country's market, or if I'm willing to, because we have some people who work the overnight shift, the worldwide market, right? So you can recruit from anywhere, which is probably a mixed bag for a company like Miva, because it means both we have access to a ton more talent, but it also means both that we could find ourselves competing with, the FANG monopolies for that same talent, in some situations. So we'll see how this plays out for businesses. But I do think the genie's out of the bottle. It's not coming back in. And I think this might be one of those disruptions that actually creates a ton of innovation. Yeah. That's my hope.
Yeah, I hope so. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for sharing this. I wish you the best. Good luck.
Thank you.
And we'll be checking in with you from the road to see how it's going. Maybe we'll get some video happening here because I'm sure people would love to see wherever you end up.
Yeah, I can do iPhone video and add it to the whole thing. You know, I mean, this has been a year of great upheaval and change, and it doesn't all have to be negative or hard. So go where you want to go. See what you can do. Yeah. With that said, thank you for listening to this week's edition of the Dragonproof e-commerce podcast. Download it at if you're listening, you've already downloaded it, but it's on all your favorite locations.
Thanks, Rick.